Hello, everyone. This is going to be a longish episode and pretty technical. Even my mind is blowing up at the moment. So get yourself something to drink, a glass of wine, a whiskey, a beer, some water, especially if you're under 18. Go. I'll wait. Okay, this is about the rule changes for 2022, and I'm talking about the technical rules. Lest we forget that the 2022 cars should have come out in 2021, but due to COVID, they were delayed by a year. This means that the teams have had an extra year to develop these forthcoming cars, and presumably they found some new innovations to what they originally had. It's tough to say, but with wind tunnel testings and simulations, one has to assume that the cars we will see in the next couple of days will be an evolution already of what they had. Having said that, 2022 brings a whole host of new variables in the mix. But before I get to the main elements, like the car, let me look at some other important factors. Aerodynamic testing restrictions for 2022. It was already implemented in 2021. The teams are limited by a sliding scale as to how much wind tunnel time they can utilize. The restrictions are worked out at 2 points, the way you finished in the previous season, and of course they will re-look at it on June the 30th of this year. That means that Mercedes has far less wind tunnel time as opposed to a team like Haas. Also, our weekends are going to be slightly different. 1.5 hour free practice sessions return, but they will be on a Friday afternoon now. This also depends on what happens if we have sprint races. Saturday remains as it has been in terms of times, also depending on sprint races. Sunday is as usual. Oh, and every single team has to have 2 free practice 1 sessions during the year where they will allow a rookie driver or a past Formula One driver who hasn't driven more than 2 Grand Prix to participate, which I think is quite cool. Another interesting aspect, we have an even lower budget cap. Now, with 23 races this season, a budget cap of $140 million seems a little bit unrealistic, but this is what the teams have to do. If we do have more than 21 races, and let's hope we have a full calendar this year, each of the teams will get another $1.2 million per race. Now, before arguments begin during the season that this team is exploiting and spending more, or that that team can repair their cars, etc., here is a copy of the budget cap regulations. It is 45 pages long. So if you just think that there's something that says, well, we're only allowed to spend $145 million, inside of here, there are appendages like exclusions, adjustments, and the like. So everything may not be as it seems. Now, let's get to the big stuff. Wheels and tires. We are aware that this year we're going to have the stunning 18-inch rim from Pirelli as opposed to the 13-inch rim, which we've so accustomed to over the years. They do look cooler, and anybody who's watched Formula 2 can attest to that fact. They are more modern. They're more in tune, I suppose, in a way with modern tires. It makes sense, I think. But why the change? So Mario Isola from Pirelli has given this out in a couple of statements. Pirelli believes its new 2022 tires will address many of the drivers' complaints about the current tires, inconsistency and overheating. This should create an environment to help the drivers, not the tires, be the center of attention. I like that idea. Tires next year or this year will be more consistent, Isola said. We tried to design a new family of compounds with a different concept, with less overheating, with a wider working range. The potential risk is that we have the majority of races on one stop because of the characteristics of the tire. Well, unless there's rain. He did go on to say that doesn't mean that this means we're going to have boring races. If we have action on the track and drivers that are pushing and overtake each other, of course, it's good for the show, he said. So that is exactly what we want to see. He did go on to say, and this is very, very important, that these 2022 tires have not been tested by any of the teams. Of course, we did see them on the 2021 cars at the final Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, but 2022 regulations are completely different. Having listened to what Mario Isola said, sounds wonderful if all of the other components fall into place in terms of the technical regulations. There's also a slight change to the fueled regulations this year. The 2022 campaign is set to be a new era for Formula One. The sports bosses want to help promote more competitiveness, of course, and greater sustainability. Cars are required to use E10 fuel, which is made up of mostly fossil fuel, but with a 10% mix of ethanol. Also, power units are fixed until 2025. So if your engine is down on power, you are nowhere, just as we saw from 2014. Yeah. Now, there are many videos online where you can see some very confusing yet very interesting ideas about 2022 designs. Most of the videos look at anything between 5 to 10 technical changes for 2022. The first thing we should consider is this. Many of these 2022 ideas have been used in Formula One before, some successfully, some not so much. Formula One cars should be beautiful. I thought the 2021 cars were beautiful, and I think 2022 will be even more beautiful. But over the years, we have had a few ugly ducklings. Let's have a quick look. Okay, 2022, what are the major changes? The cars are heavier and they're also shorter. No rules are perfect, whether they are sporting or technical, lest we forget that after what happened in Abu Dhabi. The $100 million question about 2022 is, are there any major loopholes? If you don't remember, just go and Google Brawn 2009 and the double diffuser. From what I have read in terms of 2022, it seems that there won't be massive differences between the cars. But then again, who would have thought that we would have had a domination of 8 years when the 2014 rules came out? Without being a cynic, let's just see how stunning these machines might well be. Formula One wants racing closer, following of the other cars easier and less turbulent air. Those are the 3 axes of perfection. Thus, by reducing downforce, in theory, it should make it easier to follow another car and even pass without DRS. Having said that, DRS is still available in 2022. These are the major points. From front to back, the Formula One 2022 is considerably different to Formula One 2021 due to the regulations. Basically, all the teams have been given a blank sheet of paper and have to work within the parameters and tolerances that have been allowed by Formula One. The barge boards are gone, or at least not as complex. The differences in the cars is going to be more on the surface shapes as opposed to winglets, etc. The front and rear wings are much more standardized than previously. Without a doubt, the engineers have been studying these rules for the past 2 years to understand every nuance about them. The front wing is simplified. All flaps, slots, etc. have been removed. This will mean that the airflow should be as clean as possible going over the wing as opposed to the outwash technique derived from previous designs. The front wing also only has 4 panels as opposed to 5, and the end plates have a specific geometry that must be adhered to. But how do things work? And I'm not too technical, so I looked up aerodynamics for dummies and found this rather interesting. Wings generate high and low pressure zones on their opposite sides. The high pressure zone tries to expand into the low pressure zone, but is blocked by the wing, which absorbs some of the force. Aeroplanes use this to stay aloft. Race cars do the opposite. Now, 2022 sees the return of ground effect designed cars. Of course, all cars have some form of ground effect, else they would not be able to travel at those kind of speeds so low to the ground. Something has to suck the car down. The barge boards are gone, and that pleases me. Some barge boards over the years just look ridiculous. Instead of barge boards, we had the return of ground effects. Formula One cars have not used predominantly ground effect designed cars since 1982. They were banned at the end of 1982. The pioneer of ground effects, of course, was Colin Chapman from Lotus. And I'm sure he's watching down and cannot wait for the Formula One 22 season to start. Most probably having a cigar and a glass of whiskey with his old mate, Graham Hill. He will be very impressed. What it means is down the side of the cars, because we don't have the barge boards, are these big tunnels that will channel as much air as possible underneath the car, thus creating downforce on the floor of the car. The floor itself is Venturi styled, and the premise is that the air from the front wing of the car gets channeled under the car via the Venturi slats and creates downforce through the underbody tunnels in the floor. One thing that will be weird are mud flaps over the wheel. A turning wheel, of course, creates turbulence, and Formula One believes that these devices will reduce that. So the rear of the car, we won't see double diffusers as the regulations seem too restrictive, but that does not mean we will see a whole host of smaller ideas popping up at the rear of the car as the season progresses. It will be a season of evolution. The rear wing is curved as opposed to box-like in the past. Another reason for this is to ensure that there is less dirty air from the wing itself, and thus allowing the following of other cars to be closer. The theory is that the cars become like a giant wing, one giant wing. Have Formula One got their sums right? Well, that's just a small look at the changes. There are 175 pages of regulations. So what we see might not be exactly what we think. When you have new regulations like this, I suppose the most terrifying part is getting to qualifying one of the first Grand Prix of the season, where everyone will really know how quick each of the teams are. I can't wait. Thanks for watching. Until next time, let's go racing. Take care. Ciao, ciao.